Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Daniel Mason's novel North Woods. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. Daniel Mason is an author who's written several books. This is, I believe, his fifth or sixth novel. He is, by day, a practicing psychiatrist. He wrote his first book when he was 26. So he's something of a wonderkin in that sense. That book was actually um, adapted into an opera, which is pretty rare for a novel. This book, North Woods, is I believe, a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and is a novel. I would say it's similar in some ways to A Visit from the Goon Squad in the sense that it is a novel that is told in the form of interlocking short stories. The book is set in Western Massachusetts and essentially takes place from the time of really the earliest European settlers, if you want to use that term, to the near future, um, and is a series of short stories about the people who are on this land. So we have the story of a man who fought in the Revolutionary War who owns an apple orchard. We have a woman who is the child of who's the brother of a schizophrenic man who has visions and hears voices. So it's a series of different short stories. We have the story of a man who is a painter who has something of a love affair with a famous writer. Um, and so it's just basically over the years, whoever lives in this land near this yellow house and what their lives are, and how over time they have something in common that connects one story to the next. And so it's just kind of really the history of the land told through these different characters who occupy the land at various points in time. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well written. Uh, Mason is really strong at nature writing, which is a large part of the book. He has one or two chapters that are interludes to the characters. Most of the focus is on the characters and the human beings who live in the land, but he also has one or two chapters where he is able to go out into the world and explain the lives of, I believe it was a beetle, and how the life of this beetle impacted the land that surrounds this yellow house. And there are parts of the book that I found to be quite funny and quite clever. I think Mason writes in a style very similar to T.C. Boyle to me. So in the sense that he has these characters who are somewhere very passionate and very eccentric in their lives. Um, and it's a very, very compelling read. I will say I read this in like 2 days from start to finish. It has a way of kind of pulling you forward and just having one more story until you realize that you're done with the book. So I found his writing to be very enjoyable, very, very easy to read, even though there's a lot of the language is set in period appropriate times, which may be difficult for some people. I found it to be quite enjoyable. There are times where he uses some maybe anachronistic language, but overall, I really did enjoy the book. If there are things that were negatives about the book, there are some chapters that are stronger than others. And I found while his character work was really strong in terms of coming up with interesting situations for characters, some of the characters themselves left me a little bit cold. There are interludes throughout the book that are written in the version in the voice of a song, and I thought that one or two of those maybe could have been cut for time. This is also a book I would say that's much more about the journey than the destination. There is a paranormal element to the book, and if you're someone who likes a very clear separation between the paranormal and contemporary fiction, you may have a hard time with this book because they're very much interwoven in the book. There's some things that aren't really explained. By the end of the book, there may be some things that are unanswered, and that may frustrate some readers. So I did just want to lay that out there. But overall, I found it very enjoyable, very propelling. Thought that the situations and characters were, for the most part, quite interesting. I don't know how much there was there if you're someone who's looking for something, a strong moral message or a deeper meaning to your reading. I don't know if this really provides that, but I did enjoy this book about these different characters who are in these situations, and I found them varied enough and interesting enough to propel me and enjoy me while I was reading the book. The one book that to me is kind of the clear antecedent to this book is Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. If you've read that, this to me was a very, very similar style, or as I mentioned before, A Visit from the Goon Squad. I'll leave my video to that link below. But it is basically a novel told through short stories that have interlocking characters who are in one, show up in other uh, other short stories, kind of the impact of these characters through time is actually done really well and in very interesting ways. Um, but yeah, that is that. Without spoiling anything, that's the book. If that any of that sounds interesting, I think you'll enjoy it. If you really do not like paranormal stuff, you're really not going to enjoy it. If you're someone who likes everything kind of laid out for you and all your questions answered, you're probably not going to enjoy it. But if you're someone who wants a quick, fun read, um, with interesting characters and interesting situations, I think you will enjoy it. That is North Woods. There are parts of it that maybe I think could have maybe been cut. There's a couple stories that are maybe a little thinner than others, but overall, I enjoyed the story. I will say I mentioned Cloud Atlas, and Cloud Atlas to me is much more. Cloud Atlas in some ways is almost like a different genre every short story, and that isn't quite this. The tone of the book is pretty similar throughout. There are a couple times where he does differ from that a little bit. He writes one chapter in the style of a true crime article, or yeah, article is the best way. There's a speech given at a historical society, like I mentioned, the song. So there's a little bit of variety in the writing, but from a genre standpoint, from a tone standpoint, I think he's much more even throughout the book. So don't let that scare you if that's something that you've heard. Overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was well written. Um, yeah, that is North Woods by Daniel Mason. Next time I'll be reading and reviewing The Economist Hour by Benjamin Applebaum. Until next time, if you've enjoyed this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like I said, I'll leave that link below as well as my Twitter link in the bio, in the comments below. Until next time, bye.